What is up, guys? Welcome to a brand new Sweet Film Podcast, number 3. And today we got something special to talk about. We got a special guest as well. And of course, we're talking about the MCU, though. MCU, 10 years. And finally, we're here to Infinity War, which is coming out next weekend. I'm so excited to be talking about this. But Cody, why don't you introduce yourself and then talk about our guest?
Hey guys, of course, Zach and I are here. We are back. We're excited to talk about the MCU. It's been 10 years of great superhero films. But you know what? We figured since we are talking about the MCU, who could we get? Who do we consider to be a superhero in our eyes? Well, why not get the one and only Durban from Durbania? And he's with us here today. Durban, why don't you introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for letting me come on here and talk about superheroes, because I love superheroes. I could talk about superheroes all day long. So this is going to be awesome. I'm beyond hype for Infinity War, and I'm Durban. Got a channel on YouTube, Durbania. I talk about superheroes and movies and all kinds of great stuff.
Sweet. All right. And guys, just as a reminder, if you don't have a chance to listen or watch this podcast when it comes out, we just want to give you a heads up that this episode of the Sweet Film Podcast is available on both SoundCloud and iTunes. So if you don't have the time for it here on YouTube, you can go check it out there. But without any further ado, Zach, I figured considering we are talking about the MCU and all the greatness that is inside it, Durban, Zach, let's start talking about it. And how about we talk about a little bit of history? Because up until 2008 with Iron Man, where the MCU got started, nothing like this had really ever happened before. I mean, it's pretty surprising and pretty awesome at the same time.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it is. And that's actually where I wanted to start with this whole discussion is, I mean, Iron Man. This is where it all started at. You know, I was always into the superheroes and comic books, and preferably when I was younger, I was more into DC, honestly. Besides Spider-Man and Deadpool, it was really just DC in my eyes with Batman, The Flash, and stuff. But once the MCU had kicked off, so here's the thing. Little old me, my grandma takes me out to the theaters. This is a little story time for you guys. They take me to the theaters to go see my grandma. She's like, "Hey, I love Robert Downey Jr." I'm like, "Hey, I remember him from Weird Science, preferably the only freaking film I ever saw him in when I was younger." And she takes me to go see Iron Man, and I'm not expecting anything from it. I'm expecting a fun film, but I got something blown away. And then we left. We didn't stay after the credits because little old me and my grandma didn't know to stay after the credits. And this is before I really was watching any movie news. But so she tags me something on Facebook saying there's something after the credits. So, of course, I go and read it. And I find out that Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson is in this film as Rick Fury. And I was like, what is this? So I look it up. So then I literally went to the theater by myself to go see Iron Man again. Like, I made my mom drop me off. I lied to her saying I was going with a friend because she would have been weird if I was going to the theater by myself. Went and saw it by myself. I did not pay for a ticket. I apologized to anyone watching. I just walked in and pretended I was supposed to be there. Sat down because I had to see this. Stayed after the credits, saw it, and my mind was blown. So then I get into this, like, looking up. I was like, Thor, Cap, like, who's going to show up? And it's like you find out this MCU was building up. And I never knew about it. So, like, little old me knew about this. And, I mean, overall, Iron Man is just a fantastic experience. I loved Iron Man to death. It is one of my favorite MCU films to date. And Robert Downey Jr. this was really a resurgence for his career in general. Because that same year, I'm pretty sure he also had Sherlock Holmes and Tropic Thunder, which both, like, he got nominated for Tropic Thunder. Like, come on. He got nominated for Tropic Thunder. But, seriously, he is Tony Stark. He is Iron Man. And he has always been, like, the one character out of all these people. Even though Marvel's really good at casting, I've always felt like Iron Man is literally the perfect casting out of all the MCU characters. And really just little old me. Who knew the MCU was happening? And after that, it really just became a frenzy between me and my friends. Because I was the first one to see Iron Man out of all of them. I started telling them. And I told my one friend who's, like, huge on Marvel. And he freaked out. So then he went home and told his dad. And now it's like me and my friend have seen every single Marvel film together ever since then.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I got to tell you, you and I have something in common here, Zach, because I was a DC growing up, and so I knew more about the comics and, you know, loved all the movies. Christopher Reeve as Superman, loved it. Michael Keaton as Batman, that is the best Batman. Christian Bale's pretty darn good, but that Michael Keaton one holds a special place in my heart, but I love Christian Bale as Batman. So, like, all those DC movies were always my favorite. I didn't read comics until I was more an adult, and so then I started picking up comics and started reading more, and oh, man. Those DC comics have some great and deep stories. So all I knew about Marvel came from the other Marvel movies before there was an MCU. So when Iron Man comes out, I was dating my wife at the time, and we had nothing else to do. So we went and saw Iron Man. Now, I knew nothing about Iron Man whatsoever. I knew no background on this guy. I didn't even know too much about Robert Downey Jr. I just thought, I like superheroes. The guy has an iron suit. Yeah, let's go see that. And I'm not sure that we stayed till the end credits, because at that time, human beings were not trained to sit through the end credits and wait for a special treat at the end. But eventually I did. I think it was when I got it on DVD that I actually saw the end credit scene and saw Samuel L. Jackson at the end, which was just awesome. But that movie blew me away. The cast was so good. The writing was so smart. Robert Downey Jr., like you said, is that role. Like he made that role. That role was written for him. He was born to play that, and he is just so freaking awesome in it. I mean, just him alone won me over to that part and won me over to that MCU. And so when I heard the Samuel L. Jackson thing at the end, and he talked about the Avengers Initiative, I went, why? Avengers. That sounds familiar. Oh, yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man. When I was playing that on Xbox, their Shield and the Avengers. It's the team up. See, that's how little I knew, and I feel embarrassed to admit that. But at that time, I was more of a DC. I knew the Justice League. I hadn't really followed up on Marvel, so that's when I started to, like, learn my Marvel. Like, Iron Man inspired me to learn my Marvel.
Hey, that's the best way to do it.
That's true. I mean, it absolutely is. Funny little fact, though. The interesting thing is we see a shift of fate of how things have turned for DC and Marvel.
Yes.
Back in the day, you look at the comic books, and the Avengers in the comics were created in response to the Justice League of America. They were created because of the Justice League. But now we come into the future, and you look at what's happened is that the DC Extended Universe, they're trying to get their act together, and they're cinematic universe started because of what Marvel has done.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at phase 1. I mean, the only problem that I really have with phase 1 of the MCU is Iron Man 2, but even I can have enjoyment with that movie, but
it's a fun film. It's a fun film.
Yeah, it is. I think the biggest thing that I'm thankful that Marvel does, and the reason why they have the ability to keep going, is how many risks they take. I mean, number one risk they took, not only starting the MCU, but let's take a look at Thor. How many people actually thought that movie was going to get off the ground and work? But it did, and it's one of the best films in the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh my gosh. I love the first Thor movie, and I think my favorite thing about it is Kenneth Branagh directing.
Yeah,
because
that's the best part.
Kenneth Branagh, with his like heavy Shakespeare background, he knew how to bring that kind of Shakespeare plot structure to Thor. So there was that Shakespearean drama, there was that same kind of plot structure and setup, and it fit. You needed that for Thor, and I think that's what was sorely lacking in the Dark World. Like when I heard Kenneth Branagh didn't want to do it again, and somebody else was doing Thor: The Dark World, I was a little sad. And so that kind of put my faith down. And then I was right to have my faith down because, in my opinion, that one it's still good. It just wasn't as good. But that first Thor movie really blew me away. Also, I did a lot of community theater as a kid, and most of the stuff I did was Shakespeare. So maybe for me, that was just another personal connection because Kenneth Branagh, heavy Shakespeare background. I had a heavy Shakespeare background. And so I really noticed like that drama and that flair that he put into it. And I really appreciated that. And like everybody else, I loved Loki. I love Thor. Like just the way that those actors were
the world building.
Oh my gosh. Anthony Hopkins, perfect Odin.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. That movie still holds up for the CGI. Like honestly, I'll say this, and this might be like a little like controversial, but I think the CGI in Thor, the first one, looks better than Ragnarok. And Ragnarok's beautiful. But a lot of it you can tell is CGI, and a lot of it you can tell it looks like a painting pretty much. But the first Thor, like I was rewatching it a couple weeks ago, it literally feels like I would believe that this is a real place.
Yeah. Well, I feel like and this is not a negative to Marvel, so nobody take it this way. But I feel like Marvel started in that kind of grounded verse. So even when they go and they show you Thor, they try to have some sort of a grounded feel, like you said. But as the MCU has gone on, I feel like they've leaned more towards comedy and they've leaned more cartoony. And that's
And I
not to
think-
be bad, and that's not to
Yeah.
say bad. It's just brighter colors, more cartoony, and like you said, Thor Ragnarok doesn't have the same look or feel as the first Thor.
No, and I totally agree. I think a lot of it has to be that they see that, like, hey, people really like this. They like when we took those risks with, say, Guardians of the Galaxy. So let's put more colors in there. Let's put more in this, because that's what the comic books were. I mean, Doctor Strange, I mean, if we're really talking about risk, which we'll get down later on to phase 2, a lot of their phase 2 was a lot of risks.
Yeah.
And I know we'll get down here in a second and talk about more about the risk. But Cody, I want to bring up something. Do you, Cody and Durbin, do you guys like the Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, I do.
I do. What I will say is, for the Marvel Cinematic Universe for Phase 1, I enjoy the Incredible Hulk. What I will say is my favorite part about it is the contrast they provide with Edward Norton and with the Incredible Hulk. I mean, Edward Norton, Oscar-worthy actor, fantastic performance. The only thing that I really have a problem with the Incredible Hulk is that I honestly thought the plot of it was maybe a little bit too simple, and I thought the pacing at certain points during the movie dragged on more than I would have liked. But I think it's an overall enjoyable film. What about you, Zach?
Well, the thing with the Incredible Hulk, my one big thing with it, and I like the film. It's fun. The Abomination fight scene is one of the best in the MCU.
Oh, it's awesome.
That whole fight scene, I know we watched that thing on YouTube.
It's awesome.
But the thing about the Incredible Hulk is it doesn't even feel like it's an MCU film. You take out that end credit scene, you can totally say, like, oh, okay, now General Ross, I guess, but you can totally say this isn't an MCU film.
You could.
Just being honest, you couldn't. It doesn't feel like it. It's darker. It's probably the most dark out of all the MCU films. I don't really remember a lot of comedy in there. I do like it. It is a great movie, or not great, but good movie. And Edward Norton is a really good Bruce Banner. Even though I do prefer Mark Ruffalo, I think Edward Norton, if he would have stuck around, I would have really liked him and would have liked to see his banter go about.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, some of the best films in the MCU are some of the films that don't necessarily feel like MCU films. I mean, you bring up The Incredible Hulk, then we also have Shane Black's Iron Man 3, because let's face it, Iron Man 3 is more of a Shane Black film and less of an MCU film, although it also borrows several plot points from The Incredibles. But overall, I mean, looking at the risks and everything that Marvel does on a continuous basis, and knowing now that Kevin Feige was in the background from the beginning, what that guy has managed to do with production and getting all these projects off the ground, I can't wait to see what they do for the next 10 years.
Oh, I can't wait either.
I agree.
It's really interesting. I recently went through and I watched the MCU in chronological order, and not the order they were released, but did it chronologically, which is really fun to do. But it's interesting because you can see in phase 1, it's not that they're struggling, but they're trying to find their footing. Like, you could tell, like, Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, let's test the waters here. What do people think of this? What are they liking? You know, Iron Man the first in the MCU, and so they just put that out there. And it's interesting when you watch the special features too, all the weird stuff that went on behind the scenes, and how a lot of times Robert Downey Jr. and what's his name, who played the bad guy, they would like write
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges. Why did his name slip my mind? Oh my gosh. Anyway, they would like improv some scenes and rehearse it, and then they'd go shoot it. And so it's like, it's interesting. Like, when you look at that, it's like, wow. So they were doing experimentation from the very beginning. And I feel like when you watch Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, both those movies, like, even though Robert Downey Jr. is Robert Downey Jr. to the whole thing, but both those movies have a different feel than the rest of the MCU, because those were like the first two movies testing the waters, like, seeing what are people thinking? Yeah, is this going to make the money? Can we go forward with this? And so, but it's interesting to watch that. Like, I think that's cool to go back to the beginning and see them experiment and test the waters with this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's something special about the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that Kevin Feige has laid out a plan for the whole universe. I know some things have changed, obviously, and Humans plucked out, not in there anymore, not getting it. We all know how that TV show went. It was horrible. We're not going to talk about it. But it's like they had these plans. They knew they were going with these characters, and in a certain sense, they would change if they needed to. And that's, we're not talking about DC here. I'm just gonna throw a little shade. I like the DCU, but I think they should have taken a little bit risk. Okay, let's show a little bit of Man of Steel, which is a freaking masterpiece. I don't care what anyone says. I love Man of Steel.
I love Man of Steel as well.
Have a more fun type of vibe kind of film and show it's the difference. What do people like? What do not people like? And I think the MCU kind of got that. A lot of people like more of the Iron Man flavor. Then you go down to Captain America: The First Avengers, the film right before Marvel's The Avengers. I mean, that film's underrated. That film is really underrated.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, Captain America, the first Avenger, I don't know where everybody else's footing on is. I mean, I absolutely love the first Iron Man film, but Captain America, the first Avenger is right there with me. There's something about that movie that absolutely touches me to my core. And you know, one thing that I think I absolutely love about the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the fact that if we're looking to where we are now, if nobody in their right mind was expecting that we'd be as far along as we are now. And Durbin, you are right in saying that it was a more gritty, a more realistic, less comic booky than some of the later films have been.
Film.
And I mean,
like the Red Skull.
I absolutely love Thor Ragnarok. One thing I will say about it though is it's a completely different tone than everything else we had gotten before. I mean, even different than something, say, like Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was a fun space adventure with a lot of comedy. I mean, it's just an overall blast. Thor Ragnarok is a film I feel that's made solely for entertainment.
You know what's funny? That is my least favorite of all the Thors.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, I don't hate Ragnarok, and a lot of times when I talk about it, people just hear that part where I'm the most disappointed in Ragnarok above all the other Thor movies. But I don't know. I don't hate it. I like it, and I agree that it's fun. But I don't know. I think it's because I really like the tone established in Thor in the first movie.
I do agree.
Thor was great, and they radically changed it. It's like, well, why? That you already established a tone.
And I think that's something that Marvel didn't see is that we liked the Thor character. Yes, we liked him being funny. The thing about Thor, and don't get me wrong, I like Thor Ragnarok. As a Thor film, my favorite one is the first one. As the most entertaining one, Thor Ragnarok is my favorite. It's the most entertaining one. But at the same time, it's like Iron Man 3. Take it out, you don't need it. Really, the only thing you need to see is what happens with the Asgardians. That's the truth, because that's going to probably tie right into Avengers Infinity War. But all right, end of phase 1. Marvel's The Avengers. This is I mean I want to hear. This is where I want to go because I think this is a little bad, but I think at least for me, I remember what theater I was at. I remember who I was with. I remember the first screening I ever saw this film.
Oh yeah,
and I remember how many times I saw it that summer. I want to start with both of you before I get into mine. Do you guys remember who you were with, when you saw it, how many times you saw it? Let's go about it.
Oh, absolutely. I guess actually, you know what, Durbin, you're our guest here. You can go ahead and start. Go ahead.
Oh man, well I saw it when theaters were still doing midnight showings, and I saw a midnight showing, and my wife was sitting next to me. Sitting in front of me was two of our friends and their little kid, and so we were just sitting there watching Avengers. And my friends fell asleep because they couldn't stay awake that late, and my wife almost fell asleep. And I was sitting there just grinning like a child, like, yes, this is so incredibly awesome. Like, it was a fun movie. It's funny, though, because at the same time, I was like, to me, there's a lot of plot holes the first time I was watching it. And when they were fighting in New York City, I was like, how are they all talking to each other? I mean, I'm sure they got comms, but they never got Thor back to put comms in his ear. So I could imagine, okay, Iron Man, yeah, he's got that in his suit. Maybe they put something in Cap's ear, but how are they all talking to each other? Like, seriously, there's
speech.
So there's like, I'm watching the movie, and sadly I was picking stuff like that apart, but it's probably because it was like 2 a.m. and I was tired. And the second time I saw it, I had so much more fun because I just let go even more. But yeah, no, I remember that first showing. That movie was incredible.
How many times did you see it that summer?
Oh man, probably 3 or 4 times.
Awesome. Now, Cody, tell me about your time.
Yeah. Okay. So the first time that me, my family, and friends, we saw the Avengers once again, it was a midnight screening. I mean, it was a midnight screening, bunch of popcorn, completely filled out theater, a complete and utter blast. And I believe after that first viewing, the subsequent viewings It was like either 5 or 6. I mean, ridiculous amount of times, but I got something each and every single time. And of course, we know that's the summer where one of the greatest things that has barely ever happened. And that's the Avengers is one of the first films that broke the $200 million mark opening weekend. And
Yeah.
so it was me, my parents, my brother, and then an entire group of family friends. It was like we almost took over the entirety of one of the theaters. It was insane. Without a doubt, it's one of the greatest experiences ever. But what about you, Zach? What was
All
your
right, so this is an event film. Like, this is one of those films that I will always remember. Like, Force Awakens is an event film. When that came back, this is one of those event films. Infinity War will be an event film. Weirdly, Avengers 2 wasn't an event film, but it's not saying it's a bad film. It's in that weird middle category.
It's a middle movie.
Yes. The first Avengers, though, and obviously Infinity War, since it's been building up for 10 years, the first Avengers, it built up to be this thing. Because, again, Cody, like you said earlier, and same with you, Durbin, we had never seen this before in any movies. What movie had ever had a cinematic universe of some shape? And we're not going to talk about Freddy or Jason or aliens and Predator. Like, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, that doesn't count. It's not the same.
Actually, movies that aren't sequels, but actually tying in together, which isn't a TV show. Now, this summer of 2012, we had The Amazing Spider-Man was coming out, and I was already killing the look for that because I love Spider-Man. That's my favorite hero of all time. Then you also have The Dark Knight Rises. That's another event film because The Dark Knight was such a great film. But Avengers was that special one, the one to kick off the summer on May 4th, 2012.
Oh, man, you remember the date.
Yes, yeah, dude. But the sad thing is, I didn't get to see it the first day. I actually saw it 2 days after on Saturday because I had a track meet the same night and then literally early the next day. So I was super tired. I was like, okay, I want to enjoy this. So me and my friend both said, okay, my dad's going to take us to see it on Saturday. We went to this cool theater down in Scottsdale, Arizona, where the seats moved to the film. So when Iron Man would fly, it was a total blast. When you're in the ships, awesome. the seats would kind of jump up and down. It was a total blast. But I remember I saw the film, and I came out, and we stayed after the credits this time. So we saw Thanos. And when he popped up on the screen, I was like, oh my God, is that Apocalypse? So, because I was like, I wasn't huge into Marvel. And then I thought about it, I was like, no, that's Thanos. And me and my friend's dad, who's like a super big nerd, like has all the old comic books at MCU. We went back to him, started talking about it. Then we went the next day and saw it with him, started talking with him about it, theorizing. And it's like theorizing for a film that's not going to come out for 10 more years. Because long and behold, we didn't know Ultron was going to be the next villain. We all thought it was going to be Thanos, but apparently not. But I just remember sitting down with the seats moving, the popcorn flying, the 3D action, because this was one of the first few films that I actually thought the 3D was pretty well done, and just overall just having a ton of blast. Even though it's not one of my favorite MCU films now because there's so many great ones. The Avengers is an event film that will always stick with me. The amount of fun that you have in that theater, and it is such a blast to have in the theater. It is such a fun film, and I loved it. I love the Avengers.
Yeah. What cannot be said about the Avengers? I mean, it's still arguably one of, if not the best comic book movies ever made. Of course, we'll probably get into that discussion later on as we go through this. But at the time, it was designated the best superhero film since The Dark Knight. And I mean, it just did so much. I mean, it was an enjoyable movie. It also had a lot to say. It had great performances. It had characters that clashed with one another. You had the two personalities that are going to lead us onward until Infinity War. You have Tony Stark and Captain America going back and forth with one another. And you just have one of the most enjoyable rides that you can have. I mean, The Avengers is Zach's right. It's an event movie. And I remember first night was a midnight screening. The next time that we all got together to go see the Avengers, we went to an IMAX theater to see it there. And it was even better.
Nice. Oh, man.
Now, guys, Avengers comes out. A year later, Iron Man 3 comes out. Now, I think this is a film I think a lot of people have words about. Do you guys like this film? Because I love this one.
I like it.
But I
I
know
like
the hate.
Iron
I
Man
know the
3.
hate.
But here's my interesting experience with Iron Man 3. So I went and saw it, and I was just excited mostly because of Ben Kingsley. I mean, I love Iron Man,
Oh yeah.
but Ben Kingsley and just what we saw of him in the trailer with that Southern Baptist preacher accent or however he did it, like
They'll never see me coming.
Some people call me a terrorist. I consider myself a teacher.
There it is.
Lesson number
There it
1.
is. Do you know how often I watched that trailer just because of him?
Great.
So when I saw the movie, I enjoyed the movie, but what really disappointed me was that he was just Trevor. Because I almost wouldn't have minded if he was just Trevor, if they just would have waited till like the very end of the movie and just give me more. Just give me more of him as the Mandarin. Please, just give me more, because I was eating that stuff up, man. He was so awesome as the Mandarin. And then somebody explained it to me this way after the movie, and this kind of poisoned my view going back, but I didn't have this in my first viewing, that basically the Mandarin is Iron Man's Lex Luthor. And so when I heard that, and that they took him and made him simple Trevor, this actor, I kind of just froze, and I went, oh man, that'd be like if Superman was fighting Lex Luthor, but Lex Luthor was really just the janitor, and his real villain was just that generic dude over there.
Well, it's like the whole thing with Batman v Superman. People saying that, oh, this is Lex Jr. If they do that, I'll be pissed. Like, don't do that.
Don't get me started on Lex Jr. That's a can of worms you do not want to open with me right now.
You know, we could certainly talk about the DCEU, but I think I'm going to bring us back on course here.
You should.
Yeah, so Iron Man 3, I'm not going to lie. Iron Man 3, I absolutely love it. It might very well no, it's not going to top the first Iron Man
top 10
film.
for me.
I mean,
top 10 for me for MCU. It's good.
I mean, no. Well, for MCU film, I don't necessarily think I can put it in my top 10 because Iron Man 3, as we've already discussed, it's more of a Shane Black film and less of an MCU film.
And
what I will say though is that one of my favorite aspects of Iron Man 3 is how they dealt with Tony Stark having PTSD. Because
that was the best part.
That was my favorite thing. I was just about to say that. Yeah. Someone else didn't say it. That was the best part of that film.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm sure we all have people in our lives or ourselves who have experienced PTSD, and mixed with Robert Downey Jr.'s performance and the way that Shane Black wrote the film, everything came together just so perfectly. What I will say about Iron Man 3, though, is not like films like Thor Ragnarok or the original Iron Man, is that Iron Man 3 is a film where I feel like I need to get invested. Like I need to be willing to sit down for almost 2 hours and 10 minutes and watch the entire thing, because there's a lot of material going into Iron Man 3.
Oh yeah. Well, Iron Man 3 is my favorite beginning of a Tony Stark character arc, because when you watch Iron Man 2, you have a Tony Stark who stands in front of these judges in this court of law, and he says, "You want my private property? You can't have it. But hey, you can say thank you because I privatized world peace." I mean, you're talking about a guy who was that cocky and that bold. You get to Civil War, and he's like, "Yeah, here's my freedom. Yeah, you can have the Avengers and Iron Man. You can take it all. Take it all." It's like, how did he change that drastically?
Well, that's Iron Man, love.
Yeah, Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is the beginning of that change, because you see it. Like you said, it's PTSD. It's the post-traumatic stress of the fear that something he couldn't have ever imagined, something he never thought of, entered the world. And he was ill-equipped to fight it. And he's already lost his mom and his dad, so he has a gaping wound already. And now he's got Pepper, the love of his life, in Iron Man 3, and constant nightmares of aliens, but now aliens are a real thing. So I could lose Pepper too, because how do I defend the woman I love against a threat I know nothing about? So to me, this is the beginning of a stronghold of fear that takes place over Tony, that causes him in Age of Ultron to build Ultron and bring his worst nightmare into reality, which then carries us into Civil War, where he's so filled with fear, he doesn't even trust himself with his own decisions, so he's handing everything over to the government. So Iron Man 3, to me, it was the beginning of like the most interesting Tony Stark character arc ever, because it's from that movie onward, he is not the same Tony. He's going on a descent, and we start to see him rise out of it in Spider-Man Homecoming, but he's like just from Iron Man 3 down through, he's descending.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of people say Iron Man 3 gets retconned in a lot of ways because, of course, you go to Avengers Age of Ultron, he has all of his suits again after just destroying them. But you just made something good, is that he does have this character story arc that you see in the Civil War, and some people, if you didn't see Iron Man 3, you wouldn't understand why he's just handing it over. You would think Cap would be that, but if you didn't see Winter Soldier, you wouldn't understand it either. You would think it was reversed, but obviously they both reverse positions. And you are right. The second we get to Spider-Man Homecoming, I think bringing in Spider-Man into the MCU, which we'll get into since I already said this is my favorite hero, and I loved it. But bringing in Spider-Man, bringing in a young buck who really has a lot of, you look at it, he's pretty much Tony when he started being a hero. He's cocky. He's him. And I think Tony sees a lot of that in him. And going into Infinity War, obviously, we know Tony's going to be a lot more, how can you say, probably more serious, since a big purple alien's coming down to destroy Earth.
Yeah, his worst fear is coming back.
Yeah, so we're going to see that. And obviously, we can see in the trailers is that you see him flying up in the sky in the last trailer. I'm pretty sure that's probably to save Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's latched onto that thing. So you
from
don't
the
know
Super
that.
Bowl trailer, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't know where that's all. I mean, that's all theories. That could be completely wrong, but I think a lot of it is that besides Pepper, he cares a lot about Tony, or not Tony, Peter. And I think that's going to add a lot of depth into Infinity War and just his story arc to go about. If he lives, if he dies, I don't think he's dying, but I think this adds more to his story arc. This is why Iron Man is the central focus of a lot of the MCU.
Yeah,
absolutely. And, it's really funny. I look over the entire course of the MCU. There are two characters. There are two characters in this entire saga of films that we've gotten who have the most powerful character arcs out of anybody. And those two are Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Yeah. And I think that's where a great segue. I think we should.
I mean, it's a great segue, and we could talk about Thor: The Dark World, but honestly, I feel like we should skip that because
we all know how we feel.
What are you guys talking about? Loki died.
Oh no!
Wait! No, I want to talk about Malekith. He's so great.
Oh yeah, that's
totally not generic. Yeah,
even though I have my theory that the actor who portrays him will be in Avengers Infinity War. I think he's going to be voicing one of the Black Order, but that's something else. I think old villains are going to be reprising those, like Hugo Weaving and whatnot.
But you know what? Here's the thing. We need to get on to the MCU film that changed the game. Let's talk about the Russo brothers, and let's talk about Captain America, the Winter Soldier, everybody. Look,
man, I got
Captain America, the Winter Soldier, until Civil War came out, was my absolute favorite film in the MCU. Because here's the thing, it's fun. It's a comic book movie. It's exciting, but it did something that I wasn't expecting. And not only did it take it back to the first phase of the MCU in being gritty and real and down to earth, but it also was a really exciting spy film. I mean, it had espionage elements. It reminded me a bit of Casino Royale and Skyfall from James Bond with Daniel Craig. And Chris Evans, just like Robert Downey Jr. has done with Tony Stark. In this film, he defined the role of Steve Rogers and Captain America. And by far, Steve Rogers, Captain America, he is my favorite character within the MCU right now. Just because of Captain America, the Winter Soldier. But
Winter Soldier goes back and forth between being my favorite, because that one is just such a highlight to me, because number one, it struck the best balance I've ever seen between being down on earth and gritty while keeping the MCU lightness and sense of humor. It did a great job with that balance, but then it had the character arc of Captain America, like what we talked about with Tony. So, I mean, you have Chris Evans, who in first Captain America, first Avenger, this dude not only believed in the government 100%, he put his life in their hands and said, I'll be your science experiment. That's how much he believed in it. He put his life in their hands and he became this experimental super soldier. Now he comes into our world, where in our world, as far as we knew, he died. He died in World War II, a hero, and died for our freedom. But now he's seeing what he died for. He's seeing a world of people that are so shallow, that are so stuck into Facebook, and are so afraid of events going on around the world that they are willingly handing their sovereignty over for security. You have things like Shield that are supposed to be a trustworthy, organization, co-founded by his best gal and Tony Stark's father. So he should have all the trust in the world for this. And now they have Hydra growing like a parasite inside of them, and they've let it grow unchecked. So these things that he's supposed to be trusting are these things that are betraying him. And suddenly he's seeing he laid his life down for the idea of freedom. And now he's in a generation where people are so afraid, they're willing to hand their freedom over for security. And it's like, what I loved is just how intelligent that conversation was in a comic book movie. That here you have a comic book spy movie, and they touched on something that we're dealing with in real life. And, it's like, and they did it in a really good way to not be controversial, but to use it as an amazing plot device to ask deep questions and show you how somebody like Captain America, who's so full of idealism, would feel when faced with this present generation. And it was awesome to see that.
Durbin, you literally I can't say anything after that. You literally defined what the Winter Soldier is. This film is super special. I mean, I have only seen it like 4 or 5 times, but every time I've watched it, it's like watching something and just being glued to the screen. This film, I think, as a Marvel film, as just in the MCU, it is the best made Marvel film in the MCU. It's in my top 5 for sure. I do really enjoy The Winter Soldier. But like you said, everything that you just said puts so much. This is the most film, the most depth, the most internal struggle between a character. And I think this is the film that flipped it from Captain America being this Boy Scout and just kind of being like, oh, he's cool, to being an actual hero. And I think this is the film that really switched everyone's perspective on Captain America, and also Chris Evans. This is the film that showed Chris Evans is a definitive Captain America. The Winter Soldier is a very special film. And the fact that Anthony and Joe Russo, directors from Community, which I love Community, but I remember when they got hired on,
Community so much.
When they got hired on, I was like, why?
Did you notice Abed in Winter Soldier?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you notice the Dean as the Dean in Civil War? Okay,
yes. I hope the
we
whole
can find all kinds of
community. I hope they have a scene in Infinity War where college gets destroyed and it's them sitting at the table.
That would be great.
Just something like literally flick of your finger, but really just they had little moments into it. One of my favorite things, I remember when they said Stephen Strange on that rooftop, I flipped out. I almost screamed of excitement. The Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, just he is. I mean, a lot of people forget, but like the Winter Soldier carries 2 of the best villains in the MCU. I think a lot of us forget to say is that like there's like Robert Redford is a fantastic villain.
Oh my gosh,
in Winter Soldier. Like this is an espionage spy film. And this is when I think the MCU started kicking it off and saying we can throw these films in and do different genres. Now, that same year, I think this is the best year Marvel's had. You have Guardians of the freaking Galaxy, still my favorite MCU film. This is not a superhero film. This is a space opera in every sense of the way. And the great thing about this film is that it adds Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, Drax, and Groot. 5 new characters onto the screen, and you easily find out and care about each and every one of them. That's something special about this film. It made you care about them. You don't have to have separate movies for these guys. You just started it and you easily cared about them. You have moments where you care about Rocket, where he's like telling, when you see the back of him and he kind of like makes moments to Star-Lord. You get to know Star-Lord right in the beginning with his mom. Gamora, she's the daughter of Thanos. Drax with his family, and even Groot. That last moment, we are Groot. It is just an exceptional film. It's an entertaining film, but it has even smaller levels of depth in there that James Gunn intertwined in there greatly. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. What about you guys?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I appreciate about James Gunn is the fact that one thing, when Kevin Feige brought him on to direct Guardians of the Galaxy, there was a lot of people questioning him. They knew he was a great director from smaller films. I mean, he brought us Slither and a sling of other movies, but then people are questioning, and Kevin Feige flat out just said, you know, if you're a good storyteller, you're a good storyteller. It doesn't matter what projects you've been a part of. And Guardians of the Galaxy, it's definitely in my top 3 as far as the MCU is concerned, for the fact that As far besides Doctor Strange, I'm pretty sure that this is the biggest risk that Marvel has taken, because these were a bunch of characters that nobody had ever heard about from comic books that really nobody had ever read or heard about. And we care about each and every one of the characters. And let's face it, Rocket Raccoon, played by Bradley Cooper, he steals the entire movie. Man.
And I almost didn't want to see this movie because of Rocket Raccoon. In my mind, when I heard that they were making this, I went, "Oh, come on, Marvel."
Really?
Space Raccoon.
No, you want to know something that's funny? Everyone said about this. Everyone I freaking knew said that about this. Now, a little background. This is going to be weird. So I already said I love Spider-Man and Deadpool for Marvel. The other Marvel comic I knew about, who knew, would be Guardians of the freaking Galaxy. I loved it. Well, the second I heard about, these cool characters, and then Yondu, this blue guy with the freaking mohawk, that's cool. Then they add this new group with a talking raccoon. That's awesome. A talking tree. What? Like like literally when I read the comics, I was like, that's what got me into it. Was a talking raccoon. That's pretty cool. Like I think I was like 12 when he came out. I was like 12-year-old me, cool Rocket Raccoon, talking raccoon. I'm down with it. Then when they announced this film, I think I was sitting in class and I screamed out loud. Like I almost like had to hold it back with how much excitement I had, because I was like, the fact that they're taking the balls to make Guardians of the Galaxy is great. And I almost cried because I love the film so much, because it was literally everything I wanted. Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, because it was originally supposed to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And he lost out last minute to Chris Pratt.
I didn't know that. I'm glad he lost. I mean, I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but no, he's not. He's not Star-Lord.
No, Star-Lord is Chris Pratt. And also, then Joseph Gordon-Levitt also lost out to Ant-Man. But that's a different movie that we'll talk about right after this. So he's just not having a good day. But Guardians of the Galaxy, like you said, everyone I knew, a talking raccoon, really? Then the reviews come out. This film's awesome. Opening weekend almost makes $100 million opening weekend. Weird concept. Weird creatures, talking animals, and that's when I think Marvel was like, yep, we can do whatever we want now.
Well, that was the thing that won me over. So up until I saw the first trailer, I was like, gosh, this sounds, because I never read the comics. I didn't have any of that background, so I didn't know. I just thought the idea sounded dumb. I was like, gosh, guys, seriously, don't get cocky. And then that first trailer came out, and tears streaming down my face. I was like, yes, that. And I just went, nuh-uh. Oh, Marvel, you could do anything. All right. From this day forward, you have earned the right to take my money.
And the fact that the music ties in so well to the script, that's the best thing that James Gunn did, is he takes the music, he gets what music he wants, and then intertwines it into the story. My favorite scene in the whole film is actually the scene when Star-Lord and Gamora are sitting out, and you have, I can't even think about what the song title is, but the Full, the Found, and Love, that song, when it's going around, I love the look at that. I love the look of that. And just that scene is just special. I love Guardians.
No, I'm with you there. And you know what? It's really funny because you take a movie that intertwines the music into the script so perfectly and makes each piece of music mean something, makes it a character in the film. There's a film kind of like that did something earlier last year, and that's Baby Driver. And let's look at it. I mean, what James Gunn did, script-wise, movie-wise, everything-wise, was fantastic. I will say, though, it's not my favorite MCU film, and the reason is simply this, is that Guardians of the Galaxy, with how great it is, falls under one of the biggest traps that Marvel films do, and that is with Ronin. Ronin, in my opinion...
I like Ronin.
Well, that's perfectly fine, but in my opinion, literally, Ronin was like the dark elf in Thor: The Dark World for me. He literally was a bad guy who showed up doing bad guy things for the sake of being evil and for the sake of conquering things. No backstory, no depth to his character, no nothing. He was just there to be evil. Did he work for the movie? Yes, but did it drag the movie down for me? Yes.
I could argue about this.
I don't know if it dragged it down for me.
I don't want to argue about this. But I'm not even going to bring up the controversy. Someone will slay me in the comments if I even say my controversy. So Durbin, you go.
I was going to say, I didn't have feelings towards Ronin one way or the other. Like, if I look at it objectively, I think he is kind of a generic villain. But then again, like, I was so taken with everything else in this film that I just didn't care. I didn't care if he was generic or anything. Like, I did not care. He served his purpose, and he was menacing enough. Like, you knew what he wanted, you knew what he's after, and you knew he could do it. And now you have this team of misfits who are stumbling over each other. And so, like, it just, I don't know, the way the music flowed, the way the characters flowed, and then watching our 4 Guardians of the Galaxy meet and develop their friendship, to me, that's what the whole thing was about. So I just felt like Ronan, he fit the purpose, and he fit it just right. So
and he's
that's
coming
kind of
back for Captain Marvel, though. He's coming back for Captain Marvel, so.
Wow, I thought he was, like, disintegrated.
Oh, no, well, Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s, so.
That's right.
So he's coming back for that. So who knows? Who knows how they'll have it? But
we'll
of
see
course,
what happens.
Of course, we were talking about this. I don't think we really need to talk about Age of Ultron. We all like it, right?
Well, yep. I have a controversy.
Okay, bring it up.
Controversy.
I liked it better than the first Avengers when I saw it.
Wait, that's how I was. Exactly. No, that's how I was. I liked it, and then I rewatched it, and I was like, okay, that Thor bathtub scene kind of kills it.
Well, the thing is, when you watch the deleted scenes and you get the full meaning behind the Thor bathtub scene, it's like, oh crap! Why do movie studios sit back and go, we don't want a 3-hour superhero movie? So Marvel Studios, I will sit through a 3-hour MCU movie. I'm just putting that out there. Infinity War 4 hours, and I'm still there. And I'm still going to sit through it, eating my popcorn and loving every second of it. So don't be afraid to have a long movie. Just make it good the entire time.
Yeah, no.
And so the fact that they had to go to Joss Whedon and say, you either keep the stuff at the house or you keep the stuff with the cave. And it was somebody in the editing room who said, well, we got to have one thing from the cave. So it got saved a little bit, but that made me mad knowing that.
I think they should have just reshot it. It like when you watch the film, it makes no sense. I like it. Like my thing with Age of Ultron, when I first saw it, I loved it. My one because an issue I actually have with the first Avengers, it is a slow start. After we just built up after 4 movies, we should already have they should have just kept going. I felt like it's a slow start, and once it gets into it, I mean, I when I watch the film, I'll skip ahead an hour, and I love the film.
I mean, I liked how the film opened. It opened with them already, like, as the Avengers fighting people. That was kind of cool.
Age of Ultron, that's why I like it. Opens up, they start kicking ass and stuff. And really just that house scene with Hawkeye, I love. I think that's some of the best parts about that film. Yeah. Because you actually get that Hawkeye. But it just... I also think maybe it's just because I have an issue with Ultron. He's too jokingly. He's way too jokey.
He was, and he wasn't. Like, I think what worked for me about the jokey is... he was created by Tony Stark. So he had a bit of Tony Stark imprinted on him, and he's rebelling against that. So he's not just rebelling against Stark. It's like he's internally rebelling against something inside himself because he went through Stark's programming and Stark's code writing and processing to get into this body. So he got an imprint of Stark on him. I agree, though. The trailer made him way more sinister. And so it's almost kind of a letdown when you get into the movie and he's a bit more funny. But I love James Spader, so I just sort of bought it, and I didn't care. And I thought it was pretty good.
No, it was pretty good. And I admit, Ultron's one of my favorite MCU movie villains. But one thing I can say, there's a couple things that I have negative with Age of Ultron. And the number one thing, I guess, is the fact that what happened with Age of Ultron is the same thing that happened with Iron Man 2. Is the first product was a big, gigantic moneymaker, and the studios knew that they would be able to get more butts in seats when the sequel came out, except they want to get their money quicker, so they have the production team, they have the directors, they have them pump out a product that isn't fully completed yet because they'll know they'll get money either way. And it showed in Iron Man 2, and I felt it showed in here because, like you guys have said, Avengers Age of Ultron, there are certain parts of it in its 2-hour runtime that feel like they're just rushed. They're completely brushed over and rushed.
And I agree with that.
But one thing I will also say that Avengers Age of Ultron does is it gives us our first taste of what we're going to see in Captain America Civil War.
Yes. Yeah. But what's really cool about that, it's the stronghold that's on Tony's life. That fear that is getting stronger. It's that distrust over Captain America's life that is getting stronger. It's the fact that Tony knows creating Ultron is wrong, so he won't go talk to the Avengers about it because he's just so afraid of losing those who are closest to him. He goes and actually creates his worst nightmare. And then you have Captain America, who's already having trust issues with leadership, and Tony goes behind his back without saying anything. There's like I mean, there's so much depth. Like when you get into Age of Ultron, even though it's a little rushed, and even though the studio was like, you can keep the house or you can keep the cave, Whedon, but you can't have both. So even though you have moments like that, still when you pick apart the layers of writing, there's some really good character development and growth in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, moving on to End Phase 2, you got Ant-Man. Ant-Man, another film. It's a heist film, pretty much. Love heist films. Love Ant-Man. Who knew Paul Rudd? Paul Rudd.
Gosh.
When they casted him, I was like, that's perfect. I didn't even think about putting him in there, but that's perfect. I love him as Ant-Man. I like Ant-Man. It's a fun little film. I love this film. I mean, keyword is it's a little film. But I mean, leading into that, you got Civil War, the kickoff phase. Yeah. Which was the best way you could kick off a phase 3. And
oh yeah.
Civil War. What do we think about this? Was an event film for me. I think this is another one of those event.
I consider that Avengers 3. I know technically Infinity War is Avengers 3, so I understand the technical thing. But even though we don't have Thor and we don't have Hulk, we have all the other Avengers in this, plus more. I mean, we get Black Panther and we get Spider-Man. It's an Avengers movie, and I don't care what anybody says. It's just the focal point, Captain America and Iron Man, and finally those things in their lives coming to a head. And you know what's most interesting? Okay, I like to get philosophical about things and dig too deep. The political aspect of Civil War, while it had Tony and Steve Rogers fighting each other, it's not what kept them fighting each other, right? Because eventually they made up and they got together and they realized who the real enemy was and they teamed up together again. What really tore them apart was the heart issue. Like Zemo knew what to do. He knew the politics will just keep them distracted for a little bit. The real issue is Steve Rogers loves Bucky. It's his only family. And Bucky killed Stark's only family. Boom. He destroyed the Avengers, not by attacking their politics, but by attacking their hearts and setting them up against each other. And I thought that was beyond epic. I mean, that was some smart writing that brought the Avengers down.
That last fight scene, when you see Tony's face and when he finds out, just this, I think Civil War has purely the best acting in the MCU through these characters. And it's heart. I mean, and the great thing about this film that, just like you said, I like how you go in depth. Let's plug his channel really fast. If you like that kind of stuff, go check out Durban's channel. He does tons of videos like that. But the thing about that is when you watch this film, I mean, when I went into it, I was Team Tony. I was Team Tony, honestly. That's why I was going. I was like, he's got Vision, Black Panther, Spider-Man. But the great thing about this film is that you flip-flop throughout it. You're like, I can see where he's at, and I can see where Cap's at. I totally get both their perspectives on it. I might have been more Tony just because Spider-Man was going to be on his team, and I love Spider-Man. And when he shows up, let me tell you, I geeked out in the theater really out loud. And I mean, to me, Tom Holland's my favorite interpretation. When he makes the Empire Strikes Back joke, I almost like just wanted to get up, walk out, and go see the film again, just so I could rewatch that scene.
That's pretty awesome.
When it comes to Civil War, honestly, it just speaks to the amazing things that the Russo brothers have been able to do. You know, here's the thing. Captain America Civil War is a film in the MCU that many people, including myself, up to this year, thought was the best film within the MCU. You know, they created Winter Soldier, one of, if not the best film in the MCU. They create Civil War. People also consider that to be one of, if not the best film in the MCU. And now they've directed and created Avengers Infinity War. But what they did with Captain America Civil War is something that I'm always heartbroken by and something that I'm always amazed by. It's the fact that Captain America Civil War, although it's a really intense thriller, again, it's got that grittiness and that boots on the ground feel that films like Casino Royale and Skyfall had. It's also got the fun adventure and action scenes that all the other MCU stuff has had. And it's got, you know, it keeps you engaged for the entire runtime. But at its very core, Captain America Civil War is a very personal, a very emotional story about friendships and how even the littlest of things can get in the way and how they could possibly destroy any amount of friendships that you have. And of course, the politics of what's going on and the relationship that Steve Rogers has with Bucky Barnes. Bucky Barnes is the most tragic character in the MCU because he was brainwashed to work for Hydra as a drone, essentially, as a soldier, not being able to do anything. And like he said in Civil War, even though he was being mind controlled, he still remembers everything that they made him do.
Yeah.
It's so tough. And that last fight scene, I mean, every single time that last fight scene comes up where it's revealed that Bucky was made to kill Tony's parents, that's a scene that I always get really, really choked up in, because it's always a scene that shows me, number one, the Avengers, they're officially done. Number two, if this kind of situation happened to me, I think I understand where both of them are coming from.
Yeah.
And I mean, by the end of the fight, I mean, it's just at the end of the fight, I'm just completely soaked in tears. It's
it's good.
And I think interesting that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think a lot of people look at Civil War and they're like, "Oh, the airplane sequence, that's the best action scene." I think that scene's the best action sequence, one of the best in the MCU. It's emotional. You feel all sides of this. And even then you have a Black Panther who saves Zemo. He saves Zemo. Yeah. You find out he kills his father. I mean, Black Panther is great, and we'll get to talking about Black Panther, but Civil War, it is unique. But Durbin, what did you have to say?
I was just saying, one of the cool things about it is it's so smartly written, because when you're in the airport fight, one of the things that makes the airport fight cool is not just seeing these heroes fight each other, but seeing them not want to fight each other. I mean, you have Hawkeye and Black Widow, and they're fighting. She's like, "You're pulling your punches." Well, we're still friends, right? Like, you have like lines like that where it's like, well, we have to fight. I really don't want to be fighting though. And so like, you have that tension is there. They don't want this war. No side wants this war. And that tension goes on even to the end, where Captain America writes that note out to Tony with a cell phone saying, "If you ever need me, just call." You have Spider-Man Homecoming, where they drop a line that Tony's designing a new shield for Captain America. So it's like, there's hints that even in spite of all this anger and all the stuff they've been through, they still haven't given up on each other. So it's like, all that dynamic, it's so smartly written and so smartly played out.
It's kind of like a bad breakup, but you want to get back with that person. And
yeah,
it's like, you have this like, okay, we can make it work this time. And I mean, that's the thing. I really hope that cell phone comes into play in Avengers Infinity War. I really hope. Just a small, subtle nod. You know, or who we know, maybe they've already been talking. You know,
yeah.
This is more reasons to get excited for Infinity War. I mean, we jump through the next few films. You got Doctor Strange, just looking at that film and knowing that we're going to get more of this mythical, magical stuff. And the fact that he has the time stone, I am curious to see how he plays it out with Thanos. And
it makes me nervous.
You know, it does make me nervous.
I'm actually curious about that, because if you go back and watch the Infinity War trailer, I think it was the second one where he said, "I've gone back in time to see all the possibilities of us going against Thanos." And Tony Stark says, "Is there any possibility that we win any of them?" And then it just cuts off. And so
that's a great line.
We're gonna see some stuff involving the time stone.
Well,
and
I actually have a theory on this, which I don't take this for granted. This is some weird theory I had at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I was like, "This is gonna happen," or maybe. I have a theory. But also, this kind of gets discredited because they said if anyone dies in this film, they're dead. Like, they're dead.
Right.
We're not bringing them back. This is my theory. My theory is when they're on, because I think they're not on Earth fighting. I'm pretty sure that's planet Titan, Thanos' planet.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a different area. Wherever they're at, it's a different dimension or something. My theory is a majority of the team dies on that planet. And Doctor Strange reverses it back. It's a cool sequence. It kind of takes away from that comments if it happens, but I do have a feeling that's going to happen. It would be a cool scene. I don't know. I want to see it happen, but at the same time, I don't. I think it takes away from like, okay, well, if anyone dies, Doctor Strange can just revisit.
I have theories that are almost along the same lines of what you just have. Are we talking about Infinity War theories, or are we going back to like other movies?
I mean, I was saving for Infinity War right at the end, so we can get to our theories right at the end. I was having predictions towards the end.
Yeah, no, we can do that at the end. All right, I got a theory, so we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, but so we go through Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, magical film, really
Benedict
cool
Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch is great. I mean, personally, I kind of wish Joaquin Phoenix would have gone in, because Joaquin Phoenix is the most underrated actor in Hollywood. He just goes into the roles. But then, of course, we get to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I like this film. It's a fun film. I get the
It is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
My only disappointment is all the characters being separated.
That's my
Other
thing,
than
and I
that,
hope
it's fun.
Avengers doesn't have them all separated. I know
Nope.
for majority they probably will be, but that's the thing. Guardians, they're so it felt like a TV episode with different characters, different spin-offs.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
ones
well,
are gonna follow the most?
Well, I will say you two enjoyed the film. I will say there's a lot not a lot. There's a few things I enjoyed about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Baby Groot.
I think it might be my least favorite film inside the MCU. I'm not even kidding.
Thor 2.
I mean, the sense of you.
I like Thor 2.
Well, Thor 2. I mean, they're on the same level, man. I mean, the sense of humor. For the most part, I thought it worked. Baby
How do you not like Baby Groot?
Baby Groot. I loved Baby
You're
Groot.
gonna say no to that?
Baby Groot.
I love
it. And for those of you who are listening, Zach is shoving his Baby Groot in my face.
That sounds really bad. That's what she said.
It's a toy, guys. It's just a toy for kids.
I didn't. Okay.
Anyway, so the sense of humor I didn't really enjoy all that much. I enjoyed Baby Groot. I thought all the stuff with Yondu was great. And you know what? I thought all the stuff with Star-Lord's father, I really liked that stuff too. But it just felt so overly convoluted in parts for me that I just couldn't latch on to anything.
Yeah,
I think what made it convoluted was all of them separate and all of them having their own, like you said, Zach, it's like a TV show. And so they were kind of spun off to their own corners with their own plots. And I feel like that was the convoluted part for me. And that's the part where I struggled the most.
Yeah, no, it felt like Game of Thrones in a sense, but you don't have a whole season to tell a story. If this was if the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was told in a show, like 10-episode series, it would have worked better. And I don't get me wrong, I think James is still great. I cannot wait to see what he does with the third one. I think he's going to take this criticism and make it better. I think. Except
now we know who survives Infinity War, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
But do we?
Glad they made that announcement.
Do we? That's the thing. But we all know Spider-Man 2 is coming. We all know Black Panther 2 is coming. We all know Doctor Strange 2 is coming. So that's the thing. Guardians, like you said, we'll get into theories. You can kill off some. I don't think a majority of them will die, but they did say Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, after the third one, the team will get mixed up and it'll be a different shape of Guardians. Like we see in the end of Volume 2, we see the original OG team in that concept with Sylvester Stallone. Besides Yondu not being there, the rest of them were actual main Guardians characters in the comics, which is a cool thing. But now we get to actually my second favorite MCU film. That is Spider-Man Homecoming. What a blast. What a blast.
That was a blast.
I love this film.
Okay, Spider-Man Homecoming, I guess I'll start us off here. I just watched it recently. What I will say is that Spider-Man Homecoming is a really, really good film. It's not one of my favorites, though.
He's walked away. He's walked away.
Look, okay, here's the thing. What I will say is I love Spider-Man. I absolutely love Tom Holland is my favorite interpretation. And as far as a Spider-Man film is concerned, I absolutely loved it. My only problem with Spider-Man Homecoming, sense of humor, it was pretty much Edge of 17 meets a superhero film. It was great. However, the thing that dragged it down for me is the fact that I thought Spider-Man Homecoming, I thought its pacing was a little bit too slow at points. There were certain...
See, I never felt that for me. I never
it follows a John Hughes formula. So it goes... So, like, I don't know. You go back to something like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Breakfast Club. It follows that sort of 80s teen movie formula. So it does have those slow down moments, but they're kind of intentional because that's what that old vibe was.
No, I also my other favorite thing about it is Vulture. Vulture is fantastic. I love Vulture in there, and
Vulture was great.
Vulture is a very special for me in there because Vulture is the thing about Vulture is that he's a unique villain. Like he's one of the best in there. I mean, maybe it's not how he was written, but maybe just how Michael Keaton played him.
Well, that scene where it's Tom Holland and Michael Keaton in the car and they're driving to the prom, that whole awkward car ride was probably the most intense scene in the movie. other than the
Yeah.
entire concrete room collapsing on him, which is my favorite scene in the movie.
I mean, who didn't like when he opens the door? I mean, I kind of had suspicions, but when he opens his door and you get the reveal, you're like, oh.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't see that coming. I felt like when I saw it coming, I should have known. Like that was my first thought. I should have seen that coming, but I didn't. And so I had the like that was so awesome.
Yeah, no, that was great. And it's because it wasn't predictable. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I loved it, because when Michael Keaton shows up at his doorstep, I literally thought to myself, he knows he's Spider-Man. And oh, great, he probably kidnapped the person that Peter's in love with. Great. I knew this was going to happen. And then, you find out that he's actually her dad. And I'm like, that makes him a little... That
Shout
makes
out
him
to Marvel for doing interracial marriage. That's awesome. I mean, I like seeing that in films. I'm just being honest. It's cool when they do that.
It's like, here's the thing. Okay, the fact that he is her father makes it something a little bit more special, because now he's just the dad trying to provide for his family and trying to take care of his family. That makes him a very, very special and unique kind of villain.
And it added layers to Vulture more. If I honestly I say I love this film, but there is one thing I hate about this film. I wanted more swinging around action. I know we're getting that Avengers Infinity War, but I get it. He just is new Spider-Man. Like, I would be afraid of heights too, but swing around, dude. You can just keep swinging. Like, I mean, that's maybe I've just been like, Amazing Spider-Man 2 for me has like some of the best swinging action. Yeah. And like, I think that's the best thing about this film is the action and like the way he's swinging around. But like Spider-Man Homecoming, I think we wanted more of that and we didn't. Like, obviously he's just kind of staying partial to Queens and all that. Like, he's not going to New York down freaking Main Street. But yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I really have slight issues with Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it's a great, great film.
You know, my biggest issue with Homecoming is the lack of Spidey senses. And I wished, and I like the Infinity War trailer where we see the hair on his arm like all stand up. And so like we know he has them, and now we get to see him use them. And I like that interpretation, and kind of like how the hairs on his arm pointed almost in the direction of the danger. So it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I wish we had that in Homecoming. Now we got Karen. I love Karen, and I love his suit. A lot of people didn't like the suit.
I like
said
it was.
I love this suit.
Technologically,
I just wish we got more Spidey senses with it. Like, I think the suit gave us what we get in the Spider-Man comics a lot: him talking to himself, and and planning things out. And I guess him talking to Karen makes him seem less crazy.
It made it like a Deadpool kind of thing without having to break the fourth wall. Since Spider-Man does break some of the fourth wall in the comics, you kind of get that. But after Spider-Man Homecoming, we get Thor Ragnarok. And I know we kind of already touched on this, and I like Thor Ragnarok. It's one of the most entertaining films in the MCU. If you watch it just to have fun, it's a blast.
And I did that, and it was
Valkyrie was my biggest thing I love about this film. I love Valkyrie.
Okay, and one thing that we should also bring up, I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I feel as though the villains that we got in Marvel Phase 3 are the best villains we've had since Marvel Phase 1. Because in Spider-Man Homecoming, you had Vulture. In Spider-Man Homecoming, you had Vulture. Then in Thor Ragnarok, you had Hela. And look, she doesn't have...
I hate Hela.
You hate Hela?
She's horrible. She sits in a throne room. I'm going to tell you a story. Look at the roof. Blah, 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 blah. Let me do some cool shit at the end. Oh, I'm dead.
Wait a second.
That's how I saw her. Like, Kate Blanchett's great. Kate Blanchett's hot. She's in this leather suit. She's great. She looks great. She's badass. But I just didn't care about her. When she died,
you know
what
I hated about Hela? And it's not so much probably what I hated about Hela. It's what I hated what the film and the story did with her. So here are some strong moments. We've gotten to know Thor and the Warriors 3 and Sif. Sif just not in this movie. And no mention of her. She's just gone.
Yeah.
And then the Warriors 3 are taken out in a second. And I think what we were supposed to see is, oh, that's the power of Hela, that the Warriors 3, and they were taken out in 1 second. But then they covered that up with comedy really fast. So we lose some of the biggest Thor characters to a villain who is so powerful that they didn't even stand a chance for 1 second. And instead of that being met with a moment of pain where we sit with it, it's met with a joke. And so... moments like that were ruined for me. That's why Thor Ragnarok's my least favorite. It's just because it was too jokey. They leaned too heavy on the 80s vibe. The story is serious. Thor loses his father. He loses his closest friends. He loses his hammer. His homeland is destroyed. When you look at it, just from there, it is the darkest, most serious MCU movie of a character experiencing their darkest night. And the whole movie is a freaking slapstick comedy.
Yep, that is true. And that is a pet peeve that I have with the movie. One thing I will say though is another problem I had is I love Hela to death, but she didn't have enough screen time. Like I felt that Hela should have been in the movie more, and I feel as though, they're not giving away any secrets, but I have a feeling that we might be seeing Hela more in Avengers Infinity War at some point.
Like, do you think she's Lady Death, the one that Thanos is trying to impress?
Yeah, you know what? I certainly hope so. Because if we can get Kate Blanchett in another MCU film where she can actually show her stuff as the villain Hela.
Fucking throne room.
Yeah.
I really don't like Hela. I'm sorry.
Obviously, we can see, guys, and we can hear that Zach does not like Hela. But you know what? Moving on from Thor Ragnarok, let's move on to the film that is my favorite MCU film right now. And that is the one that we most recently got. Yeah. Let's talk about Black Panther. Before I get into what I have to say, I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
I love it. I saw it 7 times in theaters.
I wish Movie Pass let me see a movie more than once. That would be.
It
then
does.
I would have seen it at least. It does it?
Yeah.
Did they change that? Oh,
yeah,
sweet.
they changed it once they did the $10. They changed it.
Oh, then I'm gonna go see it 7 times now. Okay,
that's what
I was going off the old rules. I did not look at their updated terms of service. Oh my gosh, this is a great day. But yeah, no, I love Black Panther. I thought that movie was fantastic.
Great, Killmonger, best villain in the MCU. I'm sorry, he really is. And
Michael B. reminded me of a Batman.
I'm sorry, I have a crush on this dude. Like this dude is like his swagger when he walks on screen. I wish I could pull that off.
Well, he is Michael B. Jordan, aka.
Yeah. Well, he reminded me of a Batman villain, and that Batman villains are so interesting. Like they are fascinating. Their backstories are fascinating. Why they are the way they are is fascinating, and they did that right in this movie. He was so good.
Now, yeah, and honestly, when it comes to Black Panther, I feel as though this is an area where we should be careful because Black Panther is still in theaters, and there's probably people
right.
No spoilers for it. We'll touch over it a little bit.
What I will say about Black Panther, and the reason why it is my favorite film in the MCU, is although it does follow some of the familiar beats of films like The Lion King or other films inside the MCU, with all the tension and turmoil that our world is kind of in right now, a film like Black Panther to come along and to actually kind of say, no, not kind of, it says that there are more things that bring us together and more things that bind us together than make us different, that make us separate. For a film, a superhero movie to come out about somebody who is becoming the best version of themselves, somebody who's got to become the king of their people, and to preach a message like this that people need to hear. Honestly, it's something that I wasn't expecting, since I don't think we've gotten a message like that in any of the other MCU films. And I know that might be a different point for everybody else, but for that message alone, Black Panther is my favorite MCU film. Plus, Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, he was fantastic.
I mean,
you're talking about following Lion King beats, but Lion King follows Hamlet beats. So it's funny because there's just nothing original left in the world. So it's only what unique things do you do with what we got. So even though it follows a lot of beats from Lion King and beats from other MCU movies, who cares? They did an amazing job with it. They showed us a world on Earth that might as well have been another planet. And it was awesome to imagine like a hidden paradise somewhere, a hidden place with that much technology. And it was a great story of nobility. Like in this movie, you see what it really means to be a king. What should the heart of a king really be? And you see how T'Challa's father's sins caught up with them finally. And now T'Challa has to deal with it. And T'Challa has to make a change and say, are we going to follow the same course or are we going to do something different? And it was awesome. I loved it. I loved that whole storyline.
Absolutely. I mean, Black Panther, say over and over again, there's something incredibly special about it. And I've seen it 4 times in the theater, and I'm probably going to go see it again right before Infinity War comes out. There's just something incredibly unique and special about Black Panther. And like many of the other films in the MCU, I think this is a film that we haven't really, not just from a message standpoint, but from what we get to see with Wakanda, what we get to see with T'Challa's family, what we get to see with his home life, what we get to see with Killmonger. This is a very different MCU film than we've gotten in the past. And as far as I know, as far as I saw, comparing the action scenes in Black Panther, I think they're the most brutal we've gotten in the MCU so far, too.
You want to know something?
Definitely.
That's actually where I take away. That's the one thing I actually didn't like about Black Panther is the action scenes, and this is something just in the MCU in general. Is Black Panther? I feel like his fighting style in Civil War was completely different than how he fought in Black Panther. I thought he was a little bit more badass in Civil War. Maybe it's just because obviously it's different direction, or maybe it's not a vengeance story. But for me, it's like yes, some of the scenes are very brutal. Some of the scenes with Killmonger and Black Panther, especially when they're trying not to say spoilers, but we all know about the water cliff. We know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You've seen the
Yep.
That scene's very brutal. That is a very brutal scene. But I felt like some of the scenes could have been better in the action pacing. But my favorite thing about Black Panther is Wakanda itself. The females in this film are the most special parts. That's some of the most stuff I'm most anticipating in Black Panther or Avengers Infinity War is seeing Okoye, seeing Shuri again. I don't care. Actually, I do care how big their roles is because they're showing them on all the posters. They better have some significance to this. I hope it's not just for marketing purposes. I really hope not. And I think that's where we get into Avengers.
Yep. Let's talk about Infinity War.
There's 3 things I want to go through with both of you. And this is how we'll kind of end this podcast episode. 1 for both of you guys. First thing, lay down. I want you guys to predict 1 death you think is going to happen. 2, 1 crazy wild theory. And 3, all right, we'll do 2 more things. 3, what is the one worry you have about the film? And 4, what is something you're super looking forward to seeing? Even if you don't know if it's going to happen, but just something you're looking forward to seeing happen. So one of you 2 start.
Well, I got a better idea. How about with each individual point we're going to make, how about we go around circle style and go through each point and talk it out, and then we'll go from there. So, okay, once again, Durbin, you're our guest here. You go ahead and start.
All right. What was number 1 again?
Character who do you think's going to die?
Oh,
1 person.
I think, just 1? Okay, because I think multiple. But yeah, I think for sure this is where Steve Rogers will bite the dust. And I did a trailer breakdown video with my friend and my wife on my channel, and he had a theory that I think I agree with. Oh, wait, this is not the wild theory. I won't say that here then. I'll save it for later. But yeah, no, I think it's Captain America. I think he's going to die in this one.
All right, Cody, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to have to agree with Durbin. I mean, they've been planning 10 years, and we're finally getting major character deaths. I know it may seem like a sad thing for some, but for me, I think it's about time, because I think this is a great way to add levity, to show us the stakes, to actually show us characters we care about, and show us that these characters in this situation, they can actually die, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's horrendously sad, but it's something that needs to happen so we can add gravity to this whole universe. I was contemplating, it's either between Tony Stark or Captain America, and I'm pretty sure Steve Rogers is the one that's going to go.
Now, I agree with both of you guys, just because mostly the Russo brothers is in charge of this whole thing. Like, they're the ones carrying his arc through the last few films. But I'm going to go a little bit different right here. I'm saying Thor dies.
What?
I think now, let me put this in perspective. I was not on this until I did a live stream talking about who I think is going to die. And someone in the live stream really said something to me. He said, Thor's lost everything. I think Loki's dead. I think Loki's dead.
I do too.
I think Loki, he's had his character arc, he's dead. I think it puts perspective that Thor has literally lost everything. I'm guessing.
Which is going to make Ragnarok even more pointless, by the way. But go on.
Yes. Besides Valkyrie, that's all I care about. I want a Valkyrie solo film. I think we're going to get it. Probably before a Black Widow film. But besides that, I think Thor has already lost everything. I look at character arcs that you have furthering other people. I think we're going to lose some major players. And you look at Thor. I love Chris Hemsworth. I love him as Thor. I don't see him doing a fourth one. There's a reason there's not one announced. I'm sorry. Like, there's a reason there's not a fourth Thor announced.
Yeah.
And Captain America, you look at Captain America, it's the same thing. Where does his character arc go? There's ways you could do his character arc, but I look at Thor and I just say he's a major player. If he dies, I'll be upset. I think a majority of people will be upset.
Yeah, but it's a good kind of upset because it's an honorable death.
Yeah.
There's no stakes. The other reason I say this is he's barely in the trailers. And I know they've said that he's one of the main players for this film. Him and Thanos have the most screen time. So I think that kind of adds to it for me that I think Thor bites it in this one. And I think it makes the most sense for his character arc rounding out. But I do think Cap will die. I think he'll either die in this one or the fourth one. One of the two.
Yeah. It absolutely makes a lot of sense. And, when it comes to Loki, if we remember from the first Avengers film, Thanos' little mouth of Sauron guy, he basically told Loki that if Loki fails with all of his plans to take over the earth, that there wasn't any rock and there wasn't any crevice that Thanos wouldn't be able to find him, and he would have wished for something as sweet as pain. So Loki, he's been avoiding Thanos, he's been going through all this stuff. You know what? Even though it appears Loki is offering the Tesseract to Thanos in the trailers, I have a feeling
I think he's trying to save his people.
I think he's trying to save Thor and whatnot.
I honestly feel that the scene that we are seeing in the trailers with Loki, I have a feeling that is where Loki is going to die.
100%. One of the Black Order.
That scene where that part of the trailer where you see Thanos holding Thor's head, I have a theory that happened immediately after he watched Loki die.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Agree. Now we go on, moving around to our next thing. Wild prediction time. Durbin, I want to hear it.
All right. So, wild prediction number 1, the trailer where Steve Rogers is holding Thanos' glove. That's where he dies. I think he knows he's going to die, and I think he knows he can't fight Thanos, and I think he's stalling for the other Avengers. I think he's stalling for another group of people for their survival, and I think he put his life out there and sacrificed it for whoever else. But here's my other wild theory. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
I think the 4 MCU characters that started everything in phase 1 will die in the course of these 2 movies. I think Hulk will die. I think Thor will die. I think Iron Man will die. And I think Cap will die. Because I think we're moving on to the next generation, which is Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and all of them. And I think we're moving onward. And so, and these characters, like these actors, not expressing a hatred towards what they're doing, but they've all expressed, we want to move on and do something different. Like, Chris Evans wants to direct. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to get the ending of all of their arcs. I think the 4 originals that started the MCU are going to die.
I'm kind of sad now. Shit. I don't want to cry about that. But I do see that. I actually think, going to that, Avengers 3, let's say this. Cap and Thor die in this one.
Yeah.
4th one, Iron Man and Hulk die.
Yep.
And that's how it goes.
I think so. And I think that's what I agree with the most. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, honestly, I think I have to agree with Zach more because for your while, it's a good one. I mean, in all honesty, if that happens in this movie, I will literally go into a slump of depression if that comes true in Avengers Infinity War. But I will say it had meaning and all that stuff, and it'll be good. I do, however, think it's more likely that all the Avengers, the main Avengers that we've grown to love over the course that started everything, I think they're going to go between Avengers Infinity War Part 1, which is this one, and the 4th Avengers film. I think it's by the 4th Avengers film. Yeah, they're definitely all going to be gone. But what I will predict, what is my prediction for this? This is a good question.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this is like for actually Avengers 3 and 4. I actually do predict that Tony Stark will be the last remaining Avenger. I think he'll be the only one to live throughout all 3 of them. And I think he'll take on a Nick Fury role. And I think he'll be the one to build back up a new agency and kind of lead these new Avengers into a new team. My other theory, this is wild theory. I posted this on Twitter, and I'm 100% saying this. Hawkeye is the main source. where the Soul Stone is, the Soul Stone is with Captain Marvel in some different dimension, and Hawkeye is being sent by Nick Fury to go and find it.
Ooh.
And then by the end of the film, Captain Marvel is going to have a Superman moment like in Justice League, pop in and kick some ass, and that's where it's going to end at.
That's interesting.
That's amazing.
So you know something else I think? I think certain characters like Spider-Man will die.
Yeah.
And people like Benedict Cumberbatch will have their time stone, and Tony Stark, who will not be able to tolerate the death of Spider-Man, will sacrifice himself, knowing what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. He'll alter time to save Peter Parker.
There's going to be time travel. Come on. We all know this.
Oh, of course there's going to. And you know what? My biggest fear with time travel is that they'll go back and like ruin the continuity of things. That's my biggest fear.
Hey,
like,
Days of Future Past did it, and it helped the films.
Yeah, well, that's because the films are doing terrible, and Days of Future Past did that. The MCU is doing great, and I don't want them to touch anything.
That's true. Except for Ragnarok, right?
Yeah. 10 years. 10
Get rid
years
of Helen.
Great Marvel movies just wiped out with the time stone.
That's my fear, though, with the time stone. The moment they introduced it in Doctor Strange, I went, oh no, they're introducing the time stone because we're going to do something huge with time travel, and they're going to mess up something fundamental. Yeah. Dang it.
Okay. Okay.
So, you got your theory?
Yeah, I actually have a couple. Number one, which I'm pretty sure they've been setting this up from the beginning. Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers is going to die. However, I don't believe Captain America is, because I think they have set it up so Bucky Barnes, after Steve Rogers passes, he is going to take up the mantle of being Captain America.
I don't.
100% agree.
I don't.
So there's that.
But
or Falcon. He takes it over in the comics too. There's like two people that take it over.
I think Falcon's more likely to take it just because do you know what the White Wolf means when they're calling Bucky the White Wolf?
Not a clue.
What?
In the comics, in Black Panther comics, that is the White Wolf is actually a different character that is an adoptive brother of Black Panther.
Fascinating.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's just like for this film, but I have a feeling that he's going to be more of a prominent part in Wakanda. And I have a feeling Falcon will take it over.
Interesting.
And then Valkyrie could easily take over the Thor spot. I mean, you can mix it up around. I think people really like Tessa Thompson.
That's true.
She was good. Yeah.
Also, now we saw the Captain America. He gave up his shield at the end of Civil War. I'm guaranteeing that Tony Stark still has that shield.
Yep.
My crazy, wild, out there prediction theory is that in Avengers Infinity War, we are going to see a scene like we saw with Age of Ultron. It's going to be, this whole thing coming around. Tony Stark, he had that fear in his mind. He saw everything was coming. And then this whole thing plays out in front of him. And his worst fear comes to life. And that scene we saw in Avengers Age of Ultron, except it'll be a different area. It's not going to be Space Rock.
No, I see it happening in Space Aura.
It'll be different environment. It might be Titan, but we're going to see that same exact scene play out in its entirety that we got a glimpse of in Age of Ultron, where Tony Stark is the last one alive, and he says everybody else that we've grown to love from the Avengers, they're all going to be on the ground, and they're all going to be dead.
Oh, gosh. We're getting dark.
Yes, we are. Now, moving on, I'm going to be completely honest. I forgot what the next thing I said was. So, I have one question, I think, really to end this whole thing, is because we got the death. We got the wild prediction. Oh, the next few things, I just want us to go around one more time. One thing, will Thanos have all the gems by the end of this film? And two, what's the thing you're looking forward to the most, and what's the thing that's worrying you the most, that you think is just worrying you in general? Not who's going to die, but like things that like you think could ruin the movie.
Will he have all the stones by the end of the movie? I'm going to say
no. I think he'll have like 5 of them. Yeah, 5. Wait.
Will he have all of them? No, I think I'm with you there. I do not think he's going to have I do not think that he's going to have all the stones, but when it comes to Earth, when it comes to the human race, I'm going to say he's going to do some some quality control damage. Like, I don't know what it's going to
Captain
be.
Planet type stuff.
I don't know if it's going to be him snapping his fingers and actually wiping out half of the human race, but something, you know, Avengers Infinity War, it might be the best film that we've gotten in the MCU, but it's without a doubt going to be the darkest.
Yeah.
Hopefully. That's actually my worry. My worry is that Thanos is going to be an Ultron. And
yeah,
I hope to God he's
a legitimate worry. That is a legitimate worry. I don't think that'll be.
If he cracks a damn joke after killing someone, I will literally walk out of the theater. And watch it happen, and you can...
And Zach will just storm out his review. Yeah. I watched 2/3 of this movie, and Thanos cracked a joke after he killed Iron Man.
Tin Man.
I hope they remember you.
Well, for me, I think that he will have all the Infinity Stones at the end of the first one. At the end of part 3, he will have them all. And I think that because you've really got to set the stakes high for the finale of all of the MCU. You got to put the stakes high. Yep. And I think what's going to turn the tables is something like what you said, Zach, is Captain Marvel showing up at the end of the third one, and she's that last bit of hope because of how powerful she is. But my biggest worry, now that you said it, the joke thing, but before you said the joke thing, my biggest worry is abusing the time stone. Like, I really am afraid that they'll, I don't know, that I'm afraid that the time stone will make it too predictable and will cheapen some of the deaths. I know they said whoever dies is going to stay dead, but what does that mean? I mean, some people might die and then they go back in time and change some things and then they don't die, but somebody else dies. So, I mean, you can still keep that intensity there, but it's like, I'm worried though that they'll go back into the MCU history and change something.
I mean, that is a legitimate worry. That is something that I partially worry about as well. The one thing that I am worried about, though, I'm just hoping when it comes down to this, I know the Russo brothers, they do like their humor in certain situations, and when they've got various characters, Tony Stark, Star-Lord, they're going to have to keep some humor in the film to keep everything light.
True.
Honestly, I want Avengers.
I'm fine with humor. I'm fine with humor.
I want Avengers Infinity War when Thanos, I mean, everything up to that point I think is fine, but when Thanos is doing his thing, when everything is going down, when it comes time to get serious, I don't necessarily want there to be that much humor when Thanos is in the picture.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I hope they don't hug it out. Maybe there's a dance-off scene with Star-Lord.
Now, what was the last one? Something that we're hoping happens?
Something that you hope will happen. It's kind of like another wild prediction, but something that you hope will happen or something that you can predict that will happen.
Okay. Well, something I'm going to predict that is going to happen. First of all, Black Panther is going to survive. No, kidding. That's easy. If there's something I'm going to predict, I'm going to predict that all the stuff that we see on the plane, like the grass plane in Wakanda, I'm going to predict that is going to take place during the second half of the movie.
Fair enough. I hope it's not actually. I hope that's not actually the last action sequence. I hope there's still something bigger in there, like something else bigger.
I agree.
I predict that this is something that I've been predicting is that just like Civil War, they CGI out a lot of the stuff in the background in those trailers, like Spider-Man and whatnot. I have a feeling that they're going to CGI. They've CGI'd a lot. I think that when you see Cap running, my big theory is that it's going to pan out on the IMAX screen since it was filmed with IMAX cameras. It's going to pan out and it's going to be every hero.
Running. That would be the best if that's what happens there. Oh my gosh.
And I think it's going to be a majority of them there. Spider-Man, Doctor, whoever's not defeated yet. Yeah. I think it'll be a majority of them because you really see about Thor. It's like, what's Thor doing? He's shooting electricity and he's with Rocket and Groot. So they're obviously doing something in here. The other thing I'm actually looking forward to is I don't think Thanos will be the only one with the glove. I think someone else will also wield the gauntlet in here, and maybe not for a long time, but for a small amount of time. And my prediction is that's going to be Nebula, and then she'll die.
Ooh.
I think she's going to predict
Nebula dying.
I think she's going to predict Gamora, and she's the only Guardians member that doesn't make it out.
Oh, man.
Oh,
That would be kind of sad.
You
Wow.
know what? Here's a question.
Yeah, you did. It's like there's a silence in here now.
Here's a good question when it comes to Avengers Infinity War for those of us who don't have screeners. How early are you guys showing up to the movie theater?
I'm doing the sneak preview night because I don't have pre-screeners where I live, so I can't go see it earlier.
Okay, I can't talk about when I'm seeing it, but I'm still going Thursday night. Thursday night, I have my seats. Every theater near me, thank God, has those seat things that you just
the
pick
reserve
your seat.
tickets things.
Thank God, yes. I used to hate it, but then I just said screw it. I just have to look on the screen tickets. Which big shout out to John from the Real Talk. I was staying at his place in LA. I fell asleep. He wakes me up at 6 a.m. because for some reason he was awake. Wakes me up and goes, "Dude, they're up. They're out. The tickets are out." Bought my tickets so fast. I cannot tell you that. And now I actually looked someone to go see it again this weekend or that weekend. Yeah, you can't. Every single showing is sold out.
Oh man, this isn't
every showing is sold out.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons there's no reserved seating at the theater I go to. That's why I am showing up 3 hours early.
Hey, it's okay. Force Awakens, I showed up 12 and I sat down and some guy brought a TV and we watched the old movies.
Oh, nice. My theater has assigned seats, so I can just show up whenever I want. That's kind of nice.
I mean, that is pretty cool. I'll admit that is pretty fantastic.
Best thing of sitting. Like I said, it's an event film.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
And you know what? Saying Avengers Infinity War is an event film, that is probably a good place for us to wrap up, guys. You have heard our thoughts on everything Avengers, on everything Marvel Cinematic Universe, and everything Kevin Feige and everybody has done up to this point. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Thank you so much for showing up.
That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
And we have Zach with an Infinity War glove.
Yeah, guys, let me tell you the truth. Thanos is dead. Thanos is absolutely dead. I've already screwed him. I killed him. I found the Soul Stone. Deep. Not in Wakanda. I can't really disclose that. Actually, you guys know the Schmodown. Bobby Gucci Finstock. It's in that bag he carried on one of the sets. So he has it.
Wow. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Wow, this is a real Airplanes moment. We're just breaking the fourth wall and making everything do a slapstick comedy now.
Absolutely. But guys, all right, seriously, let's talk about this. Durbin, thank you so much for joining us on this Sweet Film Podcast. I think this is my favorite episode, probably one of my favorite discussions just in movie culture in general. It was great having you. You are a hero in our eyes, of course, and we were so happy to have you on here, man. Say some last words so they can know where to find you at.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you guys so much for having me on. I mean, when you guys sent me the message, you said, let's talk superheroes. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's talk the MCU the last 10 years. So thank you for having me on to talk about this. If you want to check me out, I got my YouTube channel, Durbania. My name is Durbin, so my channel is called Durbania because I thought it sounded awesome. Turns out that's a genus of butterfly, but that's neither here nor there. It sounds awesome. So check it out on YouTube or follow me on Twitter at World of Durbania.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Durbin. And Zach and I just spoke at the same time. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
But all right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for showing up. As always, if you guys don't have time to listen to this episode of the Sweet Film Podcast, you can find us on both SoundCloud and iTunes. So make sure you go listen to us there. And Zach, before we leave off, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
Well, of course, you guys can find me at Zach Pope on this channel because that's where you're going to be maybe watching this review. Or if you don't watch the podcast on my channel, you guys find me on SoundCloud, of course, and on iTunes. But make sure to come over to my YouTube channel. Make sure to hit up all these guys because all these guys are special. I love each and every one of these guys. And I can't wait to have Durbin, and I can't wait to do another podcast. This was literally a blast. Just talking to MCU years. I know it was long. So for all of you guys that stuck and listened, you are the best. I hope you guys listen. Make sure to comment down below and tell us more of your guys' thoughts of what you guys think, anything that we missed, any movies that we didn't sit on particularly. And if you do like Thor: The Dark World and you love that film to death, I'm very sorry that we just grazed right over that film because Malekith is... But of course, you guys are all the best. And of course, stay classy, everyone.